Marinero, the Sick Podcast, and we're going to talk Montreal Canadiens European prospects because there's one guy who has seen many of them and seen them play on more than one occasion. Some he's seen them play a little bit less, but he has pretty much detailed scouting reports. He is the European hockey correspondent for Habs Eyes on the Prize. Patrick Bexel, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure being here.
Montreal Canadiens rookie camp opens up on Wednesday, September 15th. And a lot of people are wondering if some of these players are actually going to make the big club this year. General manager Marc Bergevin has said it's up to the players. They will decide, and if they play well, they will force the hand of upper management, and upper management will actually make room for them. All right. Before we can get to some players that we probably don't know that much about, there are a few players that we do know a little bit about, but you had a chance to see them play before us. Alexander Romanoff.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to actually watch him in the national team in Stockholm. I was also fortunate enough to speak with him alone. So that was a brilliant thing. He seems like a really, really generous, nice guy. But on the ice, I've always been impressed with his skating. I think that's the most what I've been impressed with. The way he can use the edge to his benefit and backwards, forwards, anywhere. I think the expectations might have been a little bit high coming into Montreal, giving him that puck-moving defensive role that he didn't have in CSKA. And I think that transition was a little bit too big for him. It will be very interesting to see how he shapes up in this year and what kind of role he gets. But in CSKA, he was playing more of as I'm a European, a soccer fan, and he played more of a libero, like the last man defender. And I think in some ways it would benefit him to go back to that, to go back to basics and stake out the claim. I thought it was more of I think it was more the fact that in the World Juniors he stepped up and played against his peers, but when it comes to playing against the best in the world, which you do in NHL, he still has a lot to learn, and you can't let him shoulder all the responsibility at one time.
The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Essentia, the world's only natural memory foam mattress. Go to myessentia.com/sickpod and use code SICKPOD for a free pillow with your purchase. Essentia Beyond Organic Sleep. Well, if you were sleeping, Romanov would catch you with a huge hit. The one thing that he does extremely well, Patrick, and I'm sure you've seen him do this before, is deliver hard-hitting, clean hits, whether it's center ice or on the boards. But if you're sleeping and you have your head down, he's going to catch you.
Yeah, I think that was my first big gift when it came to Montreal prospects in many ways. I mean, obviously, I had a few with Lekkonen and stuff like that. But Romanov, I think it was barely a month into his KHL career, and he delivered a hit that knocked the helmet off the opposing player, and yeah, it was big hit. And I think it was like in the next period he had an offensive tackle where he took the tackle and then reversed it more or less and shifted that guy away as well. I mean, yeah, he's built like a tank.
He was sold to us as possibly a hybrid between Markov and Emelin. I take a look at the numbers he put up with CSKA or lack thereof. I take a look at the numbers last year in his first season or lack thereof. I see a lot more Emelin who skates like Markov and passes like Markov, and less so of an Emelin with a Markov who puts up points like Markov. I'm willing to say this, whether I'm right or wrong, I don't think he'll ever put up huge points at the National Hockey League level.
No, I sort of agree with you. I think I've always seen him more like a Kronwall kind of guy, but it's so easy to get stuck into these nationalistic comparison, or not nationalistic comparison, but yeah, comparisons with players from the same country. I've seen him more like this guy standing up on the blue line, protecting the attack and making sure you get a second or third wave rather than putting up the points of Markov, as you say.
Lucas Vadamo, here's a guy that in 2015 was drafted in the third round, 87th overall. Last year, he put up 13 points with Laval. It's interesting because it's a point every other game. At the same time, he's 25 years of age. He's had pretty much 3 full seasons in Laval. Is it safe to say that what you see is what you get?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's definitely shown what he got, but also with the center positions up in the air in Montreal, this is a guy you can plug in either on the wing or on the center position in the fourth line, and he will never make a bad shift. He will be solid, and sometimes that's a lot of what a coach wants. They would want someone with a hockey IQ, which Vadamo has, and I know he's always being asked before signing that 1-year contract with Montreal about if he's going to come back to Sweden or not, because the clubs here are leaping around to try to get him his signature on a contract. But I think, yeah, he's versatile and he's smart, and I think a lot of coaches want that on your fourth line. And as we've seen what happened with Montreal after this playoff run, a great playoff run, we don't really know what to expect, and it could be a very smart way of protecting you. He's also very cheap in regards to numbers, so it opens up space for someone else down the line or an addition come deadline.
For any sports jersey or even our sick merch apparel, use code SICK15 for 15% off on all the items at sportbuffshop.com. Once again, for all of your officially licensed sports apparel. All right. I want to move to Jesse Ilonan, who the Canadiens drafted in the second round, 35th overall, back in 2018. Played 29 games in Laval, picked up 17 points. It's interesting numbers in a rookie season. What can you tell us and what's his ceiling?
I compare him. He's a better offensive output than Lekkonen, and now I'm back to that, comparison with countries. But yeah, I think what stands out really is that he has one of the most best strides technically when it comes to skating in arguably that I've seen in Sweden or Finland or Russia as well. He's really, and he's worked on it. I spoke to some of his family and friends, and they said he was a really bad skater at first, but he has practiced it so much, and now he's become technically one of the best skaters. He also has a wicked shot, and unfortunately for Montreal and for Laval, he's not using it properly or as much as he should be doing. I think that is something that he will need to work on. He will need to be able to take that step in towards the net and maybe take a hit every now and then, but also get that shot off in Liga. And I think from what I saw a little bit in Laval, he took the other way towards the boards and came further from the net and with a worse angle, and he could have scored even more. I think, yeah, top or second line winger for sure. He has the skills. He just needs to put it together.
Well, if he ends up becoming a second line winger, a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans will drink to that. So here's some Cherry River Hard Seltzer. Patrick, only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives, now available in Quebec grocery stores and the beer store. Jan Mysak, drafted second round, 48th overall in 2020, a centerman who shoots left, came out of the Czech Republic, had played some games in the Ontario Hockey League, and in the Czech Republic, of course. Laval Rocket last year, 22 games, only a couple of goals. What's his identity? What could be his role as a player? And do you think this ultimately translates to a player playing in the National Hockey League one day?
I think he will play in the National Hockey League. I think he's too stubborn not to. And that's probably one of his best skills. He's determined. I spoke with him about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I had an interview on Ice on the Price with him that we published and in full as well. But he's really, really smart guy. But his work ethic is off the charts. My Czech friends and sources are telling me that they are not sure he will be able to run a power play. I think what we saw in the World Juniors is actually what we might see from Mysak more on an NHL level, where he is he's going to be moved to the wing. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I think he's going to be moved to the wing, and he's not going to be that drive of play in the same way as you see maybe Jagr or obviously, but more of a Plekanec kind of guy, I would say. Not sure point wise, but he will, and he will not run the power play as many thought when we drafted him. I think that is the main thing. We cannot have as much high hopes for him in that regard, but he is an NHLer. I have no doubt that he will play in the NHL on sheer determination, if nothing else.
One guy that a lot of people haven't seen play, but they're starting to wonder what he's all about, is Dmitri Costenko, who plays in the VHL, who's looking to actually move to the KHL. I know you've seen some highlights. I know you've broken down a little bit of his game. What can you tell us?
First and foremost, he's the same size as Romanoff when he came up. And obviously he's not as good as Romanoff because he's not sticking in the K right now. But he's on the verge of getting into the K. Arguably also, you have to realize Romanoff came into the CSKA, which is more or less a European national team, a combined European national team. One of the best teams outside the NHL. Kostenko is looking to progress into Spartak Moscow, which is the little sibling in Moscow after CSKA and Dynamo. So he has an easier route into the KHL, but he's going to be exposed more. From what I've seen, he has a hockey IQ, and I think we've seen Trevor Timmins draft that way with a lot of his picks. He's picking hockey IQ picks where he know that they are false, but they can, if they use the hockey IQ and their regular determination and skill set, they can either rectify that or they can make players out of it without having to change too much of it. So I think Kostenko, I wasn't as impressed. I mean, like when I look at a player like Romanoff or other very good skaters, they use the edge work to accelerate out of more or less any situation. And Kostenko, he glides a lot on the ice. He has the vision. He can open up a passing lane very, very well. But he doesn't have that edge work yet. I think that is something that they can definitely work on. And obviously, Russian coaches love their skating. So it's my belief that they will work on it as well. We should probably not have too high expectations. Maybe K sometimes during this year, maybe he sticks, maybe he gets sent down. But it's a similar role to Laval and NHL. He needs to take that step and move up onwards. And sometimes you take a fall and go back down, but it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Now, Kostenko was drafted in the 3rd round of 2021. And the guy who was drafted 1 round before him, 64th overall, Oliver Kapanen.
Indeed. Liga just started. I only got my Liga subscription sorted on Friday, so I only watched 1 game with him. He's also one of these guys that are smart players. Obviously, Kapanen, it comes with a little bit of a royal name in Finnish hockey. It's his uncle, Sami. But he's also in a smaller team in Liga. He will get to play. He's going to play center right now on the 4th line, but he has also played wing and center on the 2nd line during the preseason. He's a smart player. He's a fast player in straight lines, but he's not using that speed to move around the ice at good times. He has a wicked shot, especially from in close. His wrist must be made of steel because he can lift the puck up from more or less any angle over the pants of the goalkeeper. And that's where his goals come from. It will be very, very interesting to see if he can adjust to that from a semi-professional level to the professional level that Liga is.
This probably has some Montreal Canadiens fans pretty excited. So if you want to celebrate sophistication, event rentals, live music, DJ, sound system, tents, chairs, tables, decor, lighting, photo booth, TV screens, your one-stop shop, call them at 514-570-5770. We brought up a couple of names earlier on in this chat. Jesse Ilonan was one. He was their 2nd round pick in 2018 when their 1st round pick was Kotkaniemi. The other 2nd round pick we brought up was Alexander Romanov, and another 2nd round pick was Jacob Olefson, who I know you know well because he spent pretty much his entire life playing in Sweden. What's his story?
It's a very interesting story. I have tried to figure out. I've spoken to a lot of good guys covering Timrå and covering Skellefteå, which is the two teams that he's played with. I'm really not sure because he came out of Hockey Allsvenskan as an offensive-minded centerman, but it seems like for some reason or another, his confidence has gone awry when it comes to the offensive blue line. He can play quite well until then, but then it just there is a confidence issue. I don't know. He had a really bad concussion. I'm not sure you remember that. He got a tackle and hit more or less the stanchion in a similar way to Pacioretty when that happened against Boston. But yeah, it's something has gone awry. And then obviously he had a separated shoulder 2 years ago. Had surgery for that over that summer, and then he couldn't take a spot in the Skellefteå, so he moved back to Timrå. You expected more from him because it's a level down in hockey, but on the other hand, he never took that step again. And I can't. I mean, like in our top 25, under 25, I had him second last, so at number 40 when Kotkaniemi left. But yeah, it's. I have no idea what's going on. He will make a living out of hockey in Europe, that's for sure. But I can't see him even crossing the Atlantic to go to the AHL because he's not going to be offered an AHL contract. In a much similar way, injuries hampered his development, much like another very fancied prospect in Montreal, Joni Ikonen, that obviously had some of the most dreadful injuries I've heard about for 3 years running, more or less.
If I would tell you that the last Canadians European prospect player that we're going to talk about is Mattias Norlinder, would I be saving the best for last?
Yeah. Well, Romanoff has already graduated, so yeah. But Norlinder is one of them, yeah. Definitely. One of the top two.
In your opinion, who do you think has a higher ceiling and why?
Norlinder has a higher ceiling, but the question is he's not as certain to reach it. His skill level is off the charts. He has a PK Subban flair in some of his moves. He has those dangles that Rasmus Dahlin had in when he came out of Sweden for being the first overall pick. He has all that, and he puts it together every now and then. It makes for marvelous highlight reels and everything. I'm a little bit worried about his defensive play. And I spoke to Christopher Naslund, Frölunda's defensive coach, last week, and he came up with one thing. It might be easier for him because it's less time, less space to cover, and less movement as well to stand up for. But it also goes a lot faster in the NHL. So that's where I'm wondering, can he hack it? Either he becomes a really good NHL player, which I thought he would be last year, and he had a great start last year. But he also suffered an injury and was out for a month and a half. Came back and then he hit the everything running in the playoffs, which Frölunda were dreadful in. But Norlinder was the shining star. When it comes to this year, he obviously had a terrible first game of the season, or this weekend in SHL. And he was benched, and he said, "I deserve to get benched." It was the worst game I've had in a couple of years. So he was quite hard on himself. You have to wonder if he was already in Montreal playing for a position in Montreal. But I think Romanoff will definitely. I mean, like, he is an NHLer already. He will be a solid NHLer. It's a little bit more boom or bust when it comes to Norlinder. If he makes it, he's going to be great. If he doesn't, he can be an Erik Gustafsson kind of player that is a power play specialist, and he can make things happen from there. Some of the players on Frölunda describes his power play assets as fantastic because he can move so well with the puck, and he can twist and turn. He also got a great shot. Obviously, he can deliver passes. His vision is great. So he got all these tools, and they love working with him on the power play. It's the defensive errors that I'm worried about. And obviously, with a faster game, better players, you might be exposed more. He sometimes puck watches and tries to poke check where he should probably just take the player out.
When you see Norlinder play at his best, and you think of his ceiling at his best, and you see some of those flashes, which makes him an attractive player, what would be a comparable? And I'm telling you to aim high, but realistically high.
Well, we had high expectations on another Frölunda defender coming out from a couple of years ago, Rasmus Dahlin, and he hasn't really achieved all those laurels that he got on that first year.
Yeah,
I think Norlinder is not that far off if he makes it, but the question is, will he? It's Dahlin processes the game in a very, very fast way, in a very smart way. Norlinder has that opportunity. Can he adjust to make it even faster? And that will be the main thing that I'm worried about when it comes to Norlinder. Offensive, I'm not worried at all.
Patrick, if you could place a bet on MyBookie, and you go to mybookie.ag/the Sick Podcast and use code SickPicks to double your deposit, bet, win, get paid. Now, they don't have this prop, okay? So I'm going to let you know. But imagine if they did. If you can place a bet, if I were to ask you, will Mattias Norlinder quarterback a Montreal Canadiens power play in the very near future, what percentage of your money would you place?
Where near future? Is that this season or next season?
So you tell me how much you'd place on this season and how much you'd place on next season. What are your percentages?
I'll probably place, 15% on this season, and the rest I would definitely play on next season.
Is it safe to say that you don't think Mattias Norlinder will make the Montreal Canadiens in the 2021-2022 season?
It depends exactly on what role Marc Bergevin and Ducharme think he will have. It comes down to roster building. If they see that they can have an Erik Gustafsson kind of player cheaper with an entry-level contract, yeah, they get it. They take that. I fully understand they do that. The question is, NHL is not a development league.
So what is best for his development?
Development-wise, I think another year in Frölunda with hopefully a deep playoff run would be the best way. But because I don't want to pigeonhole him into becoming that, defender that plays a little bit of offense on the power play. I don't want to pigeonhole him that. I want him to be a defender that you can use on the second line all through the game in any situation.
He is a European scout for Habs Eyes on the Prize. We talked about Montreal Canadiens, European prospects, and Patrick Bexell tells you the best thing for Mattias Norlinder's development is one more year in Frölunda and a deep playoff run. Pat, another great guest on the Sick Podcast. Thanks.
Thank you guys for having me.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Marinaro. Until next time. Cheers.